Welcome to the Sensible Center podcast, where two middle-aged guys drunkenly talk politics and political reform. Grab an adult beverage and enjoy the show. Further information can be found at sensiblecenterpack.com. You can reach us at sensiblecenterpack@gmail.com or follow us on X at USASCPack. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Kevin. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. Happy belated Mother's Day.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Same to you.
It's good to be a mother.
Yeah, I've been called mother something a few times.
That was kind of my point.
Hey, I'm just not going to say that.
All right.
I don't think it's a good idea.
So how's the weather down? How's the weather down in Tennessee? Have you survived storms?
It's good.
Has it been stormy?
It's been hot. It's been stormy, just like the courtroom in New York, actually.
That's right.
But yeah, it's been raining nearly every day here. I think they get about 3 or 4 times the rain in the year that they've got in Illinois. So I made a good decision not buying the sprinkler system so far.
Everything's pretty green.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's been rainy up here. I was out in California a couple weeks ago. I think California's no longer sunny. They seem to make excuses for their weather out there. You know, it's like May gloom, June gloom. I mean, there's, and then they're like, well, it's the marine layer. It will blow off at 2 or 3 o'clock. I'm like,
Yep.
So it's cloudy and cold, 60-70% of the time out there, especially down in San Diego.
Yeah,
San Diego.
In San Francisco, too, and you could kind of expect it up there, but San Diego, you would think, would be warmer, even if it's cloudy.
I don't think San Diego ever gets, inland, by the inland, once you get inland a ways, we went out to visited some friends out in the desert, like Palm Springs area, and it was almost 100 there, but San Diego, it was, I would say mid-upper 60s, but once you get inland like 5 or 10 miles, then the temperature starts going up. But San Diego itself never gets too warm, and I don't think the ocean gets too warm either. So
there's a restaurant out there I had breakfast at one time called The Cottage. Did you happen to go by that place?
Nope.
Very
I've
good.
never heard of it. The Cottage, huh?
The Cottage.
I'll have to put it on my list. Places to go.
Place. Breakfast, definitely.
I like walking around the beach. We stayed by the beach. Some walking around there. It's nice.
Yeah, I'm always amazed.
For a couple days.
Like the beach down there, and you get the rocks, and you get the bright, colorful fish kind of swimming between the rocks, and you don't get to usually see that on a sandy beach. You know what I mean?
Yep, it's lovely. But I don't know if the real estate values are worth what they're charging to live there.
Yeah, I was reading today. The inventory in Arizona and Florida and a few other locations is shooting up, even higher than it was pre-pandemic.
Yay!
So maybe we'll see some adjustments. We'll see.
I've been noticing. More inventory, more price adjustments going down. So I think time's on my side, but we'll see. At least that's what the Rolling Stones say, isn't it?
Hey, well, they're all still alive.
So did you catch the Libertarian? Yeah, they are alive.
Yeah.
Did you catch the Libertarian convention? Did you go to that? Did you?
Yeah, I did pay some attention to that. I do not like the Libertarian candidate.
Chase Oliver, or what's his name?
Yeah, Chase Oliver. Yep.
That's a good name for a Libertarian candidate, by the way.
Every time I see his name, I think of that one guy, the one who wrote that song. Wasn't his name something Oliver?
Yep. About the
Richmond, north of Richmond.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think they come from the same background, though.
No, I don't think so. You never know.
So it sounds like the liberal wing of the Libertarian Party took over or won the convention.
The guy's definitely, he's like pro-abortion, pro-open borders.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few other things. And, there's some conspiracy theorists out there that they were trying to make Trump look good. You know what I mean? Like, okay. They brought Trump in, let him speak, let him do his thing, which I think Trump did a pretty good job out there, too. I mean, he spoke a lot of crypto, which is a big libertarian thing, and he didn't go too far off.
I should have watched that. I would like to watch Trump speaking about crypto.
Yeah, yeah. He basically said he won't restrict crypto trading.
Oh, there you
He
go.
won't allow a U.S. electronic dollar to happen. Um, that sort of thing. So he said, and it's it'll be your money. We won't take away your crypto. We'll let you have it.
So
But
did he actually get booed a little bit or no? Or is
he
that just
did
the
a little
media playing
bit.
that up?
He did. There wasn't. I expected more loud protest against him there, and there really wasn't a lot of it. There was one or two. And again, you don't know what you read online is true or not. But again, some of those people, they're calling them plants. I don't know. Libertarians are crazy. So, and that's the problem with the party. Why it never gains wings is because the minute you think they make sense, and if you really believe as a libertarian what you believe, then all of a sudden you get somebody off the rails saying something like completely crazy.
Well, that's the thing, You believe in ultimate freedom. It's a little bit of herding cats, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
that's
Some of
why
the
you
far,
kind of have
far
the party
right
system, right?
people in that party are not that different from the far, far left people in the party.
Yeah, it comes back around. It meets on the back end.
It's a circle. Yeah.
It does meet in a circle. Speaking of which, I guess they agreed on the debate schedule while we were in our little break here. Sounds like they're going to have two debates. Why just two? God knows. And they're having one before either of them become the nominee, which
Yep.
is kind of strange, right? They're having it in probably a couple weeks, right?
June? It's in June. It's in late June. I think that supports my theory that Biden's not going to make it to the convention.
Like literally, like physically, or just not the
he's
nominee
gonna
of the
back
party.
out, or he's not going to be the nominee.
So this is kind of a testing ground, the debate. They're gonna show him that he can't handle it, and then that'll give him time to find somebody before the
Well,
convention.
it gives the party a chance to test it out a little bit as kind of a final. Hey, if he doesn't back out gracefully, then we can make a decision, right? I don't know.
You're still hopeful. I think you're probably the only one left who's still hopeful that this won't be a Joe and Don fiasco at the end of the day. But you never know. There's still time. So they're doing two, one in June, one in September. Now they talked about no audience. They're going to cut the mics, so it's not going to be much fun. Given their age, I want one like the eve, like election night eve, right? Like Monday night, instead of Monday night football, do Monday night debate before the Tuesday election.
I want it to be like WWE too, where you get an
Exactly.
announcer up there.
Announcer.
Like, "No, in this corner.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be like a tag team thing. They could, because they're older. We should have that. They should be able to tag out if they get tired. Tag out to the VP
Yeah,
candidate,
the VP candidate come in.
and then you get Kamala and whoever
She
else
just starts cackling. off into space.
scrapping it up.
Yeah.
Plus, it's like a wellness check, right, before the election.
Yep.
We should at least have because they could decline pretty quickly in 2 months. Having one in September is not going to tell me shit, right?
No, a lot can change. And Trump, I think, also said he wanted Biden to have to take a drug test.
Which, that's just classic. I love that. Just throwing it out there. I think he should have a drug test. Let's do drug tests.
He just throws whatever at the wall. You know what I mean? I think sometimes he knows how it's going to work, and sometimes I think he doesn't think about how things are going to come out, and they just happen to be funny. Because he's a little bit kind of, I know this is an understatement, but he's a little kind of self-centered. You know what I mean? So,
What?
Yeah.
Get out
Sorry,
of here.
breaking news. Trump's a
Get
little
out
self-centered.
of here. So it doesn't sound like. Oh, hold on.
Well, you the one talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
What the heck's going on?
Oh, I love this.
Wait a second. There's a little scrapping going on.
Down. Oh, girl, baby, girl. Oh, really? Don't even play, baby. Girl, we are gonna move and we're gonna take your words down.
You agree to strike your words?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the
Ms.
way the
Green agrees
men
to
are
strike her
reacting here.
words.
I like the way
Apologize.
Coleman.
No.
Yeah, I know. One's doing like the face palm thing.
Now let's go. Come on, guys.
Come on.
And I would ask Ms. Green if she would just make the apology.
You will never get an apology out of me.
Someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body.
Oh, come on.
Personalities, correct?
What now?
What now? What now? At some point, Comer was blaming his hearing aids. He couldn't hear what was going on.
Why didn't the left come out and say more about the whole butch body comment? You know,
Right. Actually, in some ways, I think the left looked worse than the.
Yeah.
I mean, MTG was just trolling them clearly to get a rise out of them,
and
which
she did.
and they fell for the trap.
And
right?
then like AOC gets that little bit of a like kind of
girl,
ghetto,
baby girl. I mean, like really, come on.
Square attitude. And then my favorite part of that was Marjorie Taylor Greene and saying, you know, why don't you debate me? And AOC says, you know why? She says, yeah, because you don't have the intelligence.
Oh, I missed that part. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was entertained by that.
Well,
that's probably the
that was
most,
probably the intent, right?
And Congress is just theater, right? I mean, I believe it's just theater for years now. It's probably been theater for longer than I realized it was.
Well, it's always been somewhat of a theater, but
yeah.
now I think with social media, like you've said before, she's going to fundraise off of that, or her idea is just to get back in the news and whatever, you know.
Yeah,
it's a whole different game.
You can throw them all up for all I care. I don't, whatever. I mean, there's one or two in there that I like, but get rid of them too. I don't care. Throw them all out. Start over. I believe they're all compromised on some level or another.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're, I think one, it's theater. Two, they're not really voting in favor of, what their constituents need or want or in their best interest. And it's all garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish that the liberals would have not taken the bait on that,
Yeah.
They ended up sounding worse than MTG. Like, really. It's kind of silly.
I do feel like things are going off the rails for the left a little bit right now, which tends to happen right before an election. I mean, it kind of happened to Trump. It kind of happened to the last Bush. Things kind of start for the party in power, and then you can kind of see things happening. But again, if they take Biden out of office, they can stop that ball from rolling downhill real fast. They can reset the story. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly an opportunity to take a different tact and kind of just take the sensible tact, but they don't seem to be able to work their way out of that hole.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to rise to the occasion here.
Getting back to that debate for a minute, I wanted to talk a little bit about the debate plan.
Yep.
And how the actual debate's going to go and how the candidates are going to attack each other. And from a Trump perspective, I really think he, first of all, needs to just focus on the areas where American citizens are most sensitive, right? If he turns it into all about him and going to the classic Trump style, making big, huge, broad statements, I don't want to say he'll lose, but he'll miss a great opportunity, right? He just needs to focus on inflation, specifically shelter and food inflation, Biden's ability to communicate, and by extension, therefore lead the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East when the left attacked Trump, saying, he was going to be the warmonger and he was going to start.
Did you say Trump needs to stay focused?
I did. Focus specifically on where American citizens are most sensitive on Biden, right? And there's so much out there. He can do that. Come off the floor with him. Illegal immigration, that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, if he attacks 3 or 4 or 5 different things, clearly he can, rightly or wrongly, he can hit him on the wars and foreign policy, right? He can hit him on immigration, and he can hit him on inflation, and, like you said, kind of coherency, right?
Yeah.
Those 4, and you don't bring up anything else, you've kind of won the day. I mean, I don't see how Biden defends any of those, really.
Yeah, I think the other piece to that too, right? Americans don't have confidence he can lead because, and so as an extension, the argument by a lot of Democrats would be, well, he put smart people around him, and I think there's plenty of opportunity there for for Trump to attack Biden on that, right? Press secretary is a joke. Vice president also seems to be a joke. They don't even let her come out anymore. We had that cross-dressing nuclear regulatory agency leader who stole women's clothes from the airport, stole their suitcases. Merrick Garland isn't appreciated by either party at this point.
Nope.
So I mean, there's it's not just Biden. It's people he's putting around him. It makes him look even worse. So and Trump should take a few jabs. Don't get me wrong. Although I don't think it'll hit home quite as much with no crowd there. But he does need to just kind of be restrained. He can be restrained, hit those points, knock it out of the park. I think Biden, and this is where the Republicans kind of get a little too excited, right? All Biden really needs to do is just be coherent and give some sort of message, and people are going to be like, oh, he's not as bad as he thought,
Yeah, I mean, I would, if I was Biden, I'd focus in on our relative economy, right? Inflation is not great, but it's better than other places. I know that doesn't really matter to Americans, but I do think we are a pretty strong economy. Other than that, he did get infrastructure done, which is a good thing, I think, long-term for the economy. Got the CHIPS Act done, which I think is probably long-term good for the economy. So I would focus on the good points and then just kind of troll Trump and try to get him to because it's hard to. He's been running on sort of democracy, and I think it's really hard to run on democracy.
I would like to see Biden be forced to explain the tariffs on electric vehicles. That's a question I'd like to see asked in a debate. President Biden, when you were running against President Trump, you stated that his tariffs on China were racist and misguided, and now you're putting new tariffs on China and electric vehicles. Do you still believe they're racist and misguided? You know what I mean?
I mean, they're both kind of protectionist at this point, I would say. They're not necessarily full free trade, which I think is kind of where the American people are. I think we've kind of noticed that the rest of the world isn't operating by the same rules that we are. So to some extent, I think Americans are fine with those kind of things. But you're right. If he attacked Trump for it and then kind of has been doing it himself, it's fair game to ask that question.
I often forget how much of a service economy we really are.
Huge.
Huge. 70s and 80s, we were still a manufacturing economy. But yeah, we're probably 90% at this point. I think maybe 93% it's service economy. So the tariffs, they're protecting what little bit of the manufacturing is left. I would like to see our manufacturing base grow. Obviously, it's the cutting edge stuff and stuff that's too heavy and large to ship. I think is where we should be focusing. Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting to me. It really is. I would like to see us less focused. I mean, the thing that makes me not trust Biden's intent is really there's so much leftist. That's probably a wrong way to say it. There's so much lefty money in the green movement and green cars, and the demand for that is sinking. And all this money the government's forced all this change over in production facilities to enable electric vehicles, and now China can do it so much cheaper. It doesn't feel like he's trying to protect American workers as much as it feels like he's trying to protect an agenda and the money that the left is invested in supporting green cars. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
really interesting.
I think Trump has identified that and is visiting Michigan a lot over that. Mm-hmm. Not only, so yeah, there's a hole there. I generally believe that eventually that's where we're gonna have to head, but it's a question of how much the government is involved in that versus letting the market kind of dictate where it's gonna go. Right.
From the beginning, I've really always said, like, you got to let the market do it, because if the government forces it and you force this investment and then it fails, you're going to take companies down with it. I mean, there's still other options, and maybe some of them haven't even been invented yet. But like hydrogen, I really think hydrogen-powered vehicles have a better shot at succeeding than electric-powered vehicles, just because of the nature of batteries and what they can store and how long it takes to charge them, and how fast they lose their ability to hold energy, right?
Yeah,
That
I mean,
sort of thing.
it's hard to pick the winner, but it's also, I think, necessary to kind of nudge it along a little bit. But it's a fine line, right?
And we've gone past subsidies even, though I understand, at least on some level, hey, okay, you buy an electric car, we're going to give you a $5,000 tax break. Okay, that's one thing. Forcing companies to say, X percentage of your fleet is going
Right.
to have gas mileage over whatever X miles per gallon, that's dangerous.
Right, it's forcing the issue rather
Yeah,
than nudging
yeah.
it. And like I said, it's a fine line on how aggressive you get. I think some is necessary because I think other countries do it, and we don't want to necessarily be behind them because we're not doing it. But it's kind of a question of how aggressive you pursue it, and whether you're forcing a technology or a route that the free market might have decided differently.
But the thing too there is, right, we had Tesla, and there was a lot of government money that went into Tesla, and they did well, and no manufacturing facilities had to be reimagined to enable that. So in that case, you didn't have to take capacity over from conventional vehicles, right, or resources for that matter, work resources, everything else. Now when you start to take capacity away from conventional vehicles, price of those vehicles go up. These other vehicles are there, they're new, all the R&D that goes along with them, it's expensive, so they're expensive. And if they fail, now you're going to be looking at a real supply problem in any vehicle.
Well, here's a little story, Bob. I was in Arizona a couple months ago. I rented a car, and I signed up for the manager special because that was the cheapest one, right? And
Yep.
I get there at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. There's a line in Sky Harbor Airport, and I get up there, and they're like, "Oh, here you are. Here's your here's your electronic vehicle," because nobody wants to rent an electronic vehicle, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Nope.
like, I kind of had a feeling that was going to happen. I sort of rolled the dice, and I'm like, really? There's nothing else? They're like, nope. And so I ended up just switching to a gas one. Not that I don't believe in electronic vehicles. I just didn't want to try to figure out where I'm going to charge the car, and figure out all that out on my vacation, right? But that's just that's an indication of where the market is at versus where I'm sure Hertz or whoever probably got some credit incentives for adding to their fleet, right? And how people just don't. They're like, well, where am I going to charge it? And so
Yeah, it's
they're
one thing
sitting
if
on
you've
the
had an
lot.
electric car before, and a lot of those people, I don't think. Well, you had an electric car,
I
and
had
you
two
said
of them.
no. You had two of them, and you said
Well,
no.
it's just because I was in a different town, right?
State,
I'm like,
yeah, you hadn't done
like,
your research, and
right.
it
I hadn't
changes your
planned
travel
on it,
plans.
right? And Deb, when we were planning on driving a bit, and she's not thrilled with sitting somewhere to charge a car for 30 minutes. And,
Yeah, especially in the middle of the desert out in Arizona,
right.
Yeah.
So that's an indication. Uh, let's go. Let's do something else here. You hear this guy?
Of 2024.
I do.
I would like to
You
start
know who
off
that
by
is?
congratulating all of you for successfully making it to this achievement today.
That's a
I'm sure your high
KFC
school
kicker.
graduation
I mean,
was not what you had imagined.
Kansas City, not
Most
KFC.
likely,
yeah.
neither was your first couple years
Butker,
of
Harrison
college.
Butker, is that his
When you
name?
get to this moment through all the adversity
Harrison
thrown your way
Butthurst.
from
I mean
COVID,
Butker,
I hope you learned
right?
an important lesson
Yeah.
Butker.
that suffering in this life is only temporary.
That's him. So
As a group, you witnessed firsthand how bad leaders
if you
don't
listen
stay in
to this
their lane
commencement
can have a
address,
negative impact on society.
it's
I
kind of a big
just
thing.
just
That I want to
media
take stock
big
of
talking
how we
points
got
on
to where
him.
we are
Yeah.
and where we want
So
to
I
be
actually
as
listened
citizens
to it,
and yes, as Catholics.
and
One last thing before I begin.
now
I want to be sure to thank President Minnis and
I understand. I didn't have an issue with some of the things that he talked about, although it had kind of. You ever watch A Handmaid's Tale? You're not a Handmaid's Tale fan.
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah, it was similar to that Republican State of the Union response feel to like The Handmaid's Tale. It just because it's kind of a very traditional sort of women as homemakers. Their
Yeah,
duty in life is to
I feel
kind
like you
of
could have
be a
said something
wife.
different.
Yeah, I just don't think it was. I'm like, whether those are your views, did anyone approve this? Because I get it. You're speaking at a Catholic university, but I don't know what it had to do with graduating from school. I mean, it was a very sort of strange. I mean, he was talking about COVID a lot, the COVID fiasco, and it was just a weird. He's talking about euthanasia, IVF,
I
surrogacy,
didn't.
abortion.
Yeah,
I mean, it
I
was
didn't
it
even know
was
all
just
that.
like yeah, it was just. And then he, the Pride Month and women, uh, not not going for a career but choosing which I'm actually okay with that as long as it's their choice and that's what they want to do. Um, it was more all this other stuff that I thought was weird, which the media seemed to avoid and just sort of focused in on the woke stuff. And I'm like, if I was a parent sitting in the crowd, I'm like, this is a weird speech for a commencement address. And he said he only gave one before, and he said no to this one several times before giving it. I don't know why he decided to give it. To me, it was sort of the media blew it up for the wrong reasons, I guess. And, as you would expect, they just kind of take a little snippet and focus in on that and make it a
Nope.
thing versus look at the whole thing in general. But,
Notice the NFL hasn't really said anything about it.
yeah, I mean, I guess his teammates responded to it. And, I mean, what are you going to. I get it. I mean, the man, he has a right to have his traditional religious beliefs, and he's a religious guy, and he was speaking at a religious university. So I
His
guess in
jersey
some ways,
sold out, I guess. Not that there were probably a lot of them made in the first place.
yeah. I mean, he seems to be getting support from the people who support those viewpoints. So it was just sort of weird when I listened, because I always like the media's peddling something, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna listen to the whole thing and see it in context for what he said. But like I said, it was sort of the other parts that I had more of an issue with. He kept on
Yeah.
saying, "Stay in your lane," and it just had a weird
I'll have to
sort
go
of
back
feel
and
to
watch
it.
that.
And he was
That's
talking.
interesting.
He spent a lot of time on and he called it the TLM, the traditional Latin Mass, which I didn't even know was a thing anymore. But I guess there are certain churches that are still performing. I thought that was gone away with like Vatican II in the '60s.
It's odd. I had somebody last night on Memorial Day say to me they were going to go to one of those this week.
I didn't even know it was still a thing. And he
It's a
spent
thing.
like 5 or 10 minutes talking about, oh, you need to go to the traditional Latin Mass because, I'm like, wow, these are old school Catholics.
I'm not happy with the length of the normal Catholic Mass. I can only imagine that's probably longer. And I
Yeah.
can't understand what they're saying.
Right? So, yeah, he called it TLM. I didn't even know. So I guess I learned something. That
TLM.
there's still a Latin Mass out there.
It's like sounds like a bad boy band.
Yeah. Bad boy band. Well, Bob, today was the day, wasn't it? For closing arguments in, I guess they call it the hush money. Is this the hush money trial?
The hush money trial. Yeah.
I call it probably the only trial, right?
It seems like it's going to be. It's yeah.
Between the Supreme Court and Fawny won her election, though, or won her
And the
primary.
truth is, too, no matter what happens, this one, well, yeah, she got kicked out.
do you mean?
Fannie Willis,
What do you mean she got kicked out?
well, she got kicked off the trial.
I missed something?
You must have. They, on appeal, they granted Trump's petition.
But I thought that was just so that they would look at it to determine whether she
Maybe
would,
I'm wrong. Yeah, maybe that's, let's see.
I know they're reviewing it. The state board or whatever. But she won her primary. I know that. That was last week.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they had a primary and she won by quite a bit. But yeah, I think that's still in process. And then I think the Supreme Court is kind of needs to rule on the immunity thing. So anyway, so the hush money trial is the only game in town at this point, right?
And if he loses that one, it'll be appealed and
Yeah, but
then appealed again.
they'll probably get that through. So the closing arguments were today. We were supposed to have this podcast last week, but I was sick. I'm a little bit better, but
You sound good.
yeah, my voice is back to normal, and I'm not coughing up loogies as much as
Well, that's disappointing. We could have had a whole new audience.
could add a loogie audience. So audience, what we decided to do was, and I think the closing arguments all wrapped up today. I think the defense went first. They were about 2.5 hours, and then the prosecution put a 5-hour closing argument together, which I think is stupid in any regard. So we're not going to take up that much time, but we thought we'd try our hand at putting together a closing argument. And Bob's going to take, you're going to take the defense, right?
I'm going to take the defense.
You're going to take the defense, and I'm going to take the prosecution. And we'll see how we convince our listeners of the validity of the case. So, Bob, I think you'll go first as the defense. So we'll do it like they didn't. Although I think they said, like, traditionally when you watch like movies and whatever, I think the defense goes last. But I think I think Trump had an issue with that. The defense goes first and the prosecution goes. I would think that the defense should go last, right?
I would think so. I had thought if I was the defense, I'd want to go last. It's just like being in an if you're being interviewed for a job, you really want to go last because you're on the mind of everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's how they present their cases too, right? The prosecution goes first and then the defense. So why in closing arguments would you then go defense and then prosecution? But that's New York law, I guess. So are you ready?
Interesting. Yeah, this won't take very long. So
all right, go for it.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this thinly veiled political attack of a sham trial is almost over. I'm sorry you had to sit through this, as it was not only a waste of your time, but a tragic abuse of the justice system. Not only is the prosecution's star witness a lying con man, he openly admitted to thieving in court. He was a perfect tool for the president's opponents in an attempt to rob this country of true justice and a fair election. He's nothing but a jealous, raging scam artist. Secondly, the prosecution made you sit through salacious, unnecessary, and graphic testimony from Miss Daniels, who has also, at best, had a very questionable past. I'm sure I'm sure the president's innocence is clear to you. I'd like to point out there's no clear evidence of any wrongdoing by President Trump, and all ill intent can be attributed to a scam artist, Mr. Cohen, and a corrupt justice system and prosecutor. With that, I yield to the prosecution.
Wow. Ladies and Judge, can I ask that you ask juror number 4 to remove his MAGA hat? Yeah. Juror number 4. Yeah, take off the MAGA hat. And bailiff, you might want to ask him to also. Do you have an extra shirt so he could take the Let's Grow Brandon T-shirt off? And okay, thank you, Judge. I appreciate it.
Hey, now there's at least one or two of those pink pussy hats in the jury as well. Just want to say.
Hey, objection.
Stormy was wearing one on the bench or in the box.
So I'm going to issue a trigger warning before my closing argument because there may be things that offend people, but I'm going to go for it anyway. So this is a very simple case. Don't let the defense confuse you. Of course they're going to say it's a witch hunt. Of course, they're going to say it's all political. But we do know some things. There are still facts. We know that Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal got paid. And it doesn't actually matter whether the defendant screwed them or not. But you know he did, right? We all know he did. Stormy was paid by Cohen, and McDougal was paid by Pecker. Pecker, get it? He can't make this shit up. Anyways, the only reason why Pecker didn't catch and kill the Stormy story was that he didn't get paid back for McDougal and that doorman who said Trump had a illegitimate kid. Now, the doorman made up his story. But again, it doesn't matter if any of these stories were made up. So instead of Pecker paying Stormy, you got Cohen coming out of pocket, draws on his HELOC, and pays Stormy $130,000. Now, if your boss got in trouble, would you just pay draw $130,000 on your HELOC without expecting to get repaid for it? Come on. Let's use
Here's
our
the thing. It doesn't.
Hey.
Yeah, your
This
closing
is-
argument.
This is my closing argument. You can come back later. So, what does he do? He comes up with this payment scheme with Trump's CFO, who, by the way, is currently serving time in prison, where he gets his $130,000 back, plus reimbursement made to a consulting firm to, quote-unquote, boost Trump's online polling, which sounds a little shady. I mean, this is all pretty shady, if we all admit to that. And then he gets a bonus. He steals a little bit of it, admittedly. Why not? He's a scumbag. And then a tax gross up. So if it was actually for legal fees, you wouldn't gross up legal fees. So he needs to report this as income, so he needs to gross it up for taxes. And given what I just told you about Pecker, do you think Cohen would have paid out all this money beforehand without Trump agreeing to pay him back? I think not. Use your common sense here. And beyond that, beyond common sense, we have their notes. We have written notes that show how they come up with the $420,000. It's all written down. And we also have the wire transfer from Cohen to Stormy Daniels. We have testimony from the attorneys involved. We have invoices from Cohen regarding retainer that somehow adds up to the $420,000 written down on the sheet that shows for the reimbursement for the hush money payment. We have records in the Trump organization that have these qualified as legal expenses rather than as hush money payments. You know why? Because there is an accounting category for hush money payments. So, of course, they have to qualify them as legal expenses. So it's clear what went on. We have all the evidence. And so the defense wants you to believe that everyone else knew about the scheme, the CFO, Cohen, Stormy's attorneys, everyone except the guy whose name's on the door and the guy who signed the checks were expected to believe that he did not know about this scheme at all, that he did not approve it. And we all know from the records and the books that he's written that Donald Trump is notorious for being heavily involved in his business. He's notorious for not paying contractors, for making sure every dollar that goes out he knows about. So to think that he's paying his personal attorney $420,000 for an amount that he doesn't know about is well beyond common sense. So the defense mounted two witnesses, neither of which contradicted the major tenets of our case. Instead, they attacked our witnesses, which is what you just heard from their closing argument. But guess what? We don't like some of our witnesses either. But this douchebag over here is the one who screwed a porn star, allegedly. And he also hired a lying convict as his personal attorney. We got to play with the cards we're dealt. Do I think Cohen is a scumbag? Sure I do. I never hire the guy. But guess who did? That guy over there, the defendant. And why did he do it? Because he was his fixer. If you want somebody to do something dirty, you hire somebody dirty. He surrounds himself with fall guys. It's a classic organized crime approach. Do you think John Gotti didn't know what Sonny the Bull Gravana was doing? Clearly he did, and that's why he went to prison for it. So the payments were made and the records falsified. But did it benefit the election or for his personal reasons? Do you really feel Donald Trump gives a crap about his family? Thrice married, allegedly porn star screwing, coochie grabbing, Ivanka cheating, former president of the United States. Come on. Seriously. So there you have it. It's right before your eyes. Clear as day what happened here. The defendant has said this is a political witch hunt. Of course he would say that. It's his only defense. By the way, notice he did not take the stand to tell his side of the story. Because if he did, he'd have to perjure himself not to corroborate our case. Cohen paid Stormy and Trump paid Cohen to hush the story to benefit his election campaign. It's a real, simple, scummy case. I wish we weren't here, but in this country, we like to think that no one is above the law. Please prove that's the case and find the defendant guilty of all charges. Thank you, jury. Defense, you have something to say?
Yeah, I do, actually. I mean, everything you presented is all circumstantial. There's no specific evidence that he instructed to give money to pay her off at all.
Circumstantial,
the prosecution
sure.
didn't. The prosecution didn't give any evidence that he instructed to give the money to pay her off, specifically and most importantly for election reasons. But there's also no evidence that he knew that it was really going to be used to pay her off at all. No, chances are he knew.
Oh,
right?
so
But
is it beyond a reasonable doubt that he knew or not? That's the question. I don't think it's beyond a reasonable doubt.
It is beyond a reasonable doubt. So there is no
come on. You believe with a reasonable doubt that he did not know about this. Is that what you're saying? Reasonable doubt.
Show me the evidence.
The evidence is that he signed the checks to Cohen, right? The
Well,
evidence is
your
that
lawyer.
Stormy Daniel got paid.
You have to pay your lawyer, and you have to pay your lawyer to take care of the operations that
You
your
have to
lawyer is paid to do is take care of business, right?
You have to believe that Cohen fronted the money from his HELOC without getting Trump and his CFO to agree to repay him. The amounts exactly equal on a sheet of paper that's been presented as evidence how they calculated how much he was going to get paid for this.
It's completely legal for Trump to pay Stormy Daniels money.
It is. It's not legal to falsify business records to aid your campaign. That's
prove it was to aid his campaign.
Well,
where's the evidence that it was to aid his campaign and not protect him from his?
There's testimony on file from Pecker and Hope Hicks and other people that it was to aid the campaign. It was 3 weeks before, or 2 weeks before the election. It was after the Access Hollywood tape came out, so they had every interest in hushing another case that would come out. Today they said that, well, the Access Hollywood wasn't really a big deal, and we didn't really care too much about it. A clear lie. I mean, it's just, I agree, you don't have Trump on tape saying, Michael Cohen, I mean, all you have is testimony from Cohen at this point. And I agree, it's a little mysterious why Weisselberg, the CFO, wasn't called to testify, other than the fact that he's another Trump crony, and it could have thrown a wrench into it. Clearly the checks were cut, right? We have invoices that were paid the checks. Trump signed the checks. So you have to believe that Trump is cutting $420,000 to Cohen for what?
Well, the payment to Stormy was what, $130,000, not 400 and something.
Yeah,
right?
And then he was supposed to pay this consulting firm to boost the tech ratings $50,000, so it was $180,000 total. They doubled it to gross up for taxes. Why they doubled it, I don't know. So that's $360,000. Then they gave him a $60,000 quote unquote bonus. That's all written down on paperwork that has been presented as evidence.
Yeah, but again, show me the line item that says pay Stormy Daniels to protect my election campaign.
And they know that Trump they also have Cohen paying Stormy's attorneys the $130,000.
Give me a.
So you have all of that. So you have to
Well,
believe.
so Stormy's
that,
attorney was Michael Avenatti at the time. That guy is a
I don't
dirtbag, and
care.
obviously whatever.
They're all dirtbags.
So explain,
it's all
you don't think that
dirtbags.
guy would take every opportunity he gets
When you
to
screw
say
a
something
porn
publicly,
star
if not
and
in
try to
court, but
hush it up,
publicly?
you're going to deal with scumbags.
You
and
don't think
Michael
that guy
Cohen's
would
a
say
scumbag.
something publicly to
They're all
back her up?
scumbags. They're all scumbags. It doesn't
Right,
matter
but-
whether it was even true or not. It doesn't matter if she was trying to
There you
extort
go.
him. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't, and that's why this whole case is garbage.
No, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, the payment was made. The business records were falsified in trying to hide another
All right.
crime.
So
Now-
how many other politicians have done this in the last, we'll just say 3 years?
Well, John Edwards
let
was
alone
charged for
100.
it. John Edwards was charged.
Okay, there's
So
one.
he was a vice presidential candidate.
He was also a Republican, right?
Nope, he was a Democrat.
Was he? Yeah. How'd that work out? I don't remember. I remember
He
the
got
charges.
he got acquitted,
But
I
he was
think.
Virginia, wasn't he? Was that the guy
I
in
think he
Virginia?
paid like $1 million too. Well, I think he did. I think he did pay. I think they won out that it was to protect his wife, who was dying of cancer.
Yeah.
So he had those facts, and he didn't have. I think he was married to her his whole life, and he didn't have the other things that Trump has allegedly done.
I think it's going to be difficult to get that based on the case and what I've read. I don't think the prosecution made a good case, but the fact that it's Trump, I think you can flip a coin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not holding out hope. Not that
Well, even if he gets convicted,
I could care less whether he gets convicted or not. I honestly want the election to go forward, and because I don't think it's a good thing to I don't think it's a good precedent to set. But unfortunately, this is the guy we're dealing with. I don't want to throw him in jail and have that be a precedent for how we determine who runs for president. It's all very sad. I'm not rooting that he gets convicted at all. I do like to see justice being served. I don't think anyone is above the law. Would this be the case that I rest my hat on? No, I think the other two cases are much, much more important than this one. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has been dragging its feet, and those cases are even more complicated than this one, and for various reasons. And you mentioned Merrick Garland. I'm disappointed that it's been so slow in coming, right? I wish this all had been dealt with 2 years ago, so the electorate would know what the circumstances were. Unfortunately, this is the case. That's probably the only case that's going to come to trial. I would say it's more likely not going to be a hung jury rather than an acquittal or a conviction. But I think common sense tells me that he knew about these payments, and the law says that it's illegal. So I would lean, if I was on the jury, I'd lean towards a conviction, I guess. I'd have to hear the judge's instructions and know the law, but I think it's beyond common sense to think that Donald Trump didn't know what was going on here. I guess that's my point.
yeah, if I'm sitting in the jury, I want to see hard evidence that he knew,
He signed the checks.
and it was for the election.
Well,
I mean, that's the thing.
That's
If I don't
just
see evidence
that's
that
common sense,
if I don't
too.
see evidence on paper or in recording that said, "I need this to happen," my voters, my campaign, my something, if I don't see that, I
well, they have discussion with Pecker. I think Pecker testified that sort of the initial McDougal and some of the other ones, there was talk about that helping the campaign. But clearly, you're 3 months before an election.
and was
To
that
think that it's
conversation
not-
with Trump Was it with
Yes,
the
I think it
legal
was
team?
with. I think it was with Trump. Um, I think 3 weeks before the election. Common sense tells you, and yes, circumstantial evidence is still evidence.
Sure,
Right?
circumstantial evidence is evidence, but it's not. Circumstantial isn't really considered beyond a reasonable doubt. You got to really build a
Oh,
case.
it could be. It could be. I mean, everyone has their level of reasonable doubt. Circumstantial evidence could clearly. I think you've got a mountain of circumstantial evidence here.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I don't know. I mean, let's say he's convicted, right? What's he get? I think it's 4 years, maybe.
I don't think they're going to send him to prison.
At top, no, I don't. I don't either. I mean, but worst case, 4 years. I think they send him to prison for any time it helps him out.
I don't think it moves the needle either way at this point because I don't think it's going to make a.
He turned it into a TV show. He put the Secret Service outside his cell guarding him, be in the cell, and he'd have a paid camera in there.
Yeah, I don't see the judge sentencing him to prison at this point, but anything could happen. I would say most likely hung, probably second case, some level of guilty on some counts, maybe definitely kind of the falsifying records, maybe. No, I mean clearly if they
Could happen tomorrow.
If they had a handwritten note or an email or a taped conversation from him that says, "This is what I want you to do," and this reason, they don't. I'm not going to make it up that they don't, but I think all the other pieces you can kind of pretty easily connect the dots here, and the fact that Stormy and Cohen changed their stories and have lied over time, that doesn't mean anything to me because I consider them both. Those are the people that the defendant Trump surrounded himself with, so we just have to deal the hand that we're given, and you can believe him or not at this point, but
yeah, and to be clear, I am confident that he did it.
Okay, so there you go.
I'm not arguing that he didn't do it. I'm just arguing
saying whether the
beyond a reasonable doubt, from a juror standpoint, I think I'd probably vote innocent, right?
But they can rely on the circumstantial evidence a lot, right?
I mean, like a murder trial, I'd like to see some DNA, right, or something very solid there.
Often there isn't that DNA there, though.
Well, then you can prove the guy owned the weapon somehow.
But it will be interesting to see if they take. They're not supposed to take into account that he's the former president and maybe future president, right? Because that raises it to another level, right? If it was just Joe Schmo doing it, would your decision be different? And you need to look at it if it's just Joe Schmo. And I would say if you took Donald Trump out of the equation and just said it was Joe Schmo, I don't think there's any reason why you wouldn't convict him.
But I also, I think the thing is, it's not political from my perspective as much as it is. How do I say this? Because it is political, but it's not. I wouldn't vote guilty or not guilty based on Donald Trump alone. Let's just say it was George Bush. Okay, instead of Donald Trump, let's say George Bush was on trial, right? That's one thing. But the prosecutor in this case, Bragg, or the DA, I'm sorry, Alvin Bragg, has been very vocal about his dislike for Trump and wanting to go after him.
Yep,
and other prosecutors have been, or DAs and prosecutors and judges for that matter, have been very vocal about their opinions on Trump. There's records of these people in meetings with high-level Democrats, right? Weeks ago, well, maybe not weeks ago, months ago, years ago, right? There's all that stuff that's happening right now, where with the George Bush, you wouldn't have that.
But you got to take all that. You got to take all that out of the equation.
But no, you can't.
Yes.
I couldn't. As a juror sitting there, I'd say
the evidence is the evidence. Why they bring the case is not important. Either the evidence is there, or it's not. I mean, getting into the political aspects is not relevant. I don't think.
I think it is. I think it's very relevant.
How? How so?
Because they're throwing everything they can at the wall to see what sticks, and I'm not. Again, I haven't seen hard evidence.
Well, either it's there or it's not.
Evidence.
Then
I've seen circumstantial evidence. I mean, is Pecker a trustworthy guy? Why or why not?
Again, he's Donald's friend. Every witness in this case was either hired by him or is a friend of him or work. Hill Picks, Donald Pecker.
Is there anybody in Donald Trump's circle that you trust?
Well, that's not the prosecution's problem. That's Donald Trump.
No, if you don't trust anybody in Donald Trump's organization,
so you're saying if John Gotti, he should never get convicted because he surrounds himself with criminals.
Well,
it's a ridiculous argument.
I'm saying you need hard evidence. I mean, those guys do it for a reason. They know, right?
Well, you got testimony of people who've worked for him, people who've known him, friends of his. Who else would he associate with? And if you brought in somebody from the outside who wasn't within his circle, you think the people within his circle would be the ones that you would trust the most, right? But in here, it's the opposite. Those are somehow they become once they're no longer loyal to him, they're no longer good. He's the one who hired him. The guy was his attorney for 10 years. Give me a break.
Like I said, I wouldn't convict him. But then that said, I haven't watched the whole trial either, so I don't know. Maybe I missed something. But based on what I've read, there's no hard evidence. It's all circumstantial. And there's obviously the left is throwing everything they can at the wall to make things stick. You know, I mean, the guy's not a conservative. I think overall, generally speaking, he was a pretty decent president, especially compared to the ones over the last. I don't know, not all of them, but the ones really over the last.
Except for the fact that he wouldn't
30, 40
accept
years.
the election results, and almost caused a coup.
Well,
but other than that,
Hillary Clinton didn't accept the results either, and Joe Biden's already saying things
that's
like
not the equivalent.
Trump's trying to.
Please.
It's exactly the
not
equivalent.
the equivalent. It's not the equivalent at all.
It's the equivalent.
No.
What else we got on the agenda? What are you drinking tonight?
I was drinking. I'm still clearing up things. You ever buy booze for somebody who comes over, and then they drink like 90% of the bottle and don't finish it? So
I'm sure I have. Yeah.
So we have some neighbors who drink Jack Daniels. So I finished the rest of the bottle of Jack, and then I'm working on. I think it was about a month or 2 or 3 ago, my Captain Morgan cannon blast. It's like in the shape of a little bomb. It's the cinnamon Captain Morgans. Although this is like a never-ending bottle. It's just, I can never.
Well, it sounds like
one.
it. Cinnamon Captain Morgan kind of sounds like a never-ending bottle.
It is. I mean, it's bottomless. I just keep on pouring it. It keeps on. It's like the fishes in the loaves. It just keeps on refilling.
I used to like the Captain Morgan tattoo. You'd pour that in something, and it would taste like Dr. Pepper. I think it was Coke. Pour it.
Oh, really?
It was good. But
so
I actually have an 18-year-old bottle of rum, and
I'm
I'm not a fan of rum, and I've never really liked it. But I saw this 18-year-old bottle, and I heard it was great. So I was like, okay, I'll take one. And it tastes like bourbon. After sitting in a barrel for 18 years, it's really good.
Yeah, rum. There's some good rums out there.
I will say that I'm not gonna. Jack Daniels is fine stuff. I don't dislike it, but their Jack Daniels 12-year stuff. If you can find a bottle of that,
it's fantastic.
You wouldn't know you were drinking Jack Daniels. It tastes like bourbon.
No, I've never minded Jack. I mean, I usually, if I drink it, I'll mix it.
Yeah.
So this is probably the One of the probably it's in the last 50 years, in the last 30 years that I've drinking it straight. But it's not bad. I mean, there's worse things out there.
I've got good memories of being a young kid, very young, probably between like 8 and 13, 14, and my grandparents would have these card games every Saturday night. It'd be either at their place or one of my grandfather's sister's places. And one of my uncles would always drink whiskey and water. You know, my grandfather would like make a 7-7, you know, so he'd put 7 Up in there or whatever, with the whiskey and water. And I never quite understood that until I got older. Jack and water, great. You know, you kind of stay hydrated. It tastes good, and you're not getting all that sugar. You know what I mean?
So how much water do you mix?
Water's my favorite mixer.
How much water do you? Now I put everything on ice, so clearly
Yeah.
it eventually becomes water. How much water do you mix?
You know, it just depends on the day. Do you want a strong drink or you want a weak drink? You might put a shot of whiskey in and fill it up the rest of the way with water and or ice some days.
Really? Like a
Yeah.
rocks glass?
Yep.
That much water?
Why not? And other days you might just do, you know, equal parts. It just depends on what you want. Are you trying to, you know, are you trying to get a buzz, or are you just trying to have a drink and relax? And you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I had an older feller at work who used to drink George Dickel, which is a whiskey, right?
Yep. Tennessee.
Dickles and ginger,
Yeah, I can see that.
which actually wasn't too bad. I've had that on occasion. I've never tried just with water, though.
Yeah, I try it. A little bit of ice, a little bit of water. You'll find you'll like it. That's actually, if I'm out in Vegas, that's pretty much exclusively what I drink is like cheap whiskey and water. Because you don't, you know, you can have quite a few of them without having to, and stay hydrated. You know what I mean?
You do soda water or just flat water?
Just flat water. Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I would guess that it keeps you hydrated, right? Because at least you're getting some water.
Yep. And then, you know, I mean, you should have some ice in there to keep it cold. But yeah, that's what I think.
Yep, I'm always on the ice. So we have a choice here.
I don't like all the sugar, you know, and I don't drink Diet Coke, so I'm either drinking like the full-blown sugary stuff or nothing. That's why I go with water.
So we can either end the show, make it a quick wrap up, or we could cover abortion. What do you want to do?
Let's do meme stock.
Let's do meme stock. Oh yeah, meme stocks. Meme stocks have come back.
They have. GameStop has been through the roof.
So is it
Today
just because what's his name, Crazy Kitty or what?
Roaring Kitty, I think
Roaring
his name
Kitty.
is.
Roaring Kitty.
Yeah.
Roaring Kitty. Is it just because he came back and posted some type of signal to get back in?
He just went online and he said something mediocre. I don't know what it was, but it was like hello or.
I think he posted a picture of a gamer from a reclining position to a more focused position, like he was getting into the game again. After 3 years of not posting anything, he posts that, and the stock goes up, 67% that day?
And that day, and then the next day it was up even, I think it went up another 60-70%. Yeah, so it went from, let me look at the ticker here. We'll go for the last month. It was down under 15. It was around 14. And it hit up somewhere around 50, 55 bucks.
It came back quickly, though.
Yes, it did. And it was up again today.
Yeah, because I think they actually raised some. I think they decided to raise money off of it. I think it was up like 20% today or something.
What's interesting about that to me is one tweet from somebody with really no connection to the business or the media or related to the market whatsoever can swing a stock or two or three. Like, it wasn't just GameStop that went up that day. Of course, GameStop was the big one. You know, all he has to do is just say anything. So, I mean, he can make himself rich by just tweeting anything, every once in a while. Disappear for a while, come back, say something. And there's nothing illegal about it. There's nothing nefarious. But he can just, hey, I'm here. How's it going? And he knows the next day the stock's going to go through the roof, and then he can sell it.
So you think he's making money off of that?
Oh, well, yeah. What I suspect is happening is he probably is about to release a book or try to sell like his investing strategy or something. You know what I mean?
You ever
Like
see the
that'd
movie?
be my guess. No, I never saw that. No.
Dumb Money. It's actually pretty good. Dumb Money. So the question is, I mean, originally it was the short squeeze play, which I sort of understand, right? I mean, hedge funds had shorted the stock, and they need to post that stock over a certain period of time. So if you drive up the price, they're eventually going to have to buy it and post the stock at whatever price it is, right?
Sure. Especially as it gets more and more uncomfortable. Yeah.
That's just the rules of the game. So I kind of get that. I don't know if this time it had to do with that. I'm guessing not. So the question is this good for our, what does it say about our financial markets, I guess?
If you're going to allow shorting of stock, I think the threat of something like this happening periodically is a good thing, market-wise.
So are you for it or against shorting?
Check. I don't like shorting. I never have.
I don't like any derivatives, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't like any options. I don't like any derivative because you're literally betting. It's pure gambling. You're not. There is nothing underlying that bet, right? I mean, at least if you buy a stock, in theory, you're buying the cash flows that business will generate over time, right?
Yeah, you're just betting on a business to fail. And what
Right.
concerns me about that is when you get big enough, it becomes a lot easier to manipulate or to have some insider trading. Like, okay, I know company B, who's a competitor of company A, is about to issue this news release, whatever it happens to be. I'm going to go ahead and short company A. And that's, damaging to shareholders and the business and employees, just normal everyday people who don't even have stock in it. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, but you're a libertarian, so you should believe in all that stuff. Well, the reason, I mean, as I was going through my business education and MBA, the reason why I heard that these things were good is because they made the market efficient, right?
Sure.
They protected against whatever. It made the price more accurate, and I didn't buy any of that.
As of late, I've thought about it, and I hate it less than I used to. I actually don't mind. It's not something I do. I don't short stocks. I do trade. I don't short them. I never have, because I never thought it felt right, and I always kind of felt like I was guessing. But the more I've kind of studied it, it's kind of one of those things where if you believe based on fundamentals, a company is going to do well, or you just like what they produce, and you want to invest in them, it makes sense. Well, the same thing could be said. You try a product out, you don't like it, or you've been using a product forever and the product has gone downhill. That's kind of good enough reason, your gut tells you, hey, this is, the stock is not worth what it is. I'm going to go ahead and bet that it's going to go down. I mean, I guess fundamentally that makes sense.
You're talking yourself into it now.
Yeah, well, I have kind of talked myself into it a little more. The problem is there's a lot of manipulation out there, right? I mean, we can see it with the politicians and the way they bet. We know there's insiders everywhere, and the way they invest. The politicians don't bet; they don't really invest either. They know, right? And that's where my main problem lies. I think is the fact that it just shorting enables manipulation even more.
Yeah, I mean, manipulation, corruption, that has no place. Insider information, that has no place. The question is, if you purely thought whatever, NVIDIA or whatever was overvalued, that it was due for a decline, should you be able to bet against that stock versus bet
I would feel
on the
better if you
stock?
were betting against it at a casino rather than in the actual market. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Because a lot of what happens, there's a lot of stock trading that happens off market. And that's what really concerns me. I'd be more comfortable with the shorting of stocks, if you will, if there wasn't off market trading. All trading had to be done on the major stock exchanges.
So this is
But
what I learned in business school, and this is still my sort of belief, and you could call it naive. Have you ever read the book A Random Walk Down Wall Street?
no, I have not.
Look it up. It's classic. So I went to the University of Chicago for my MBA, and that's where the efficient markets theory was developed, right? Which means all available information is built into the price of a stock. Therefore, you can never game the system, right? Because the stock price as of today has whatever information is available about that stock.
That's half true.
Now, you don't take the human and the
It's available to
psychological
somebody,
and
but not everybody.
well, yeah. One of the assumptions is that the information is available, right? So if you did enough research, in theory, outside of inside information, right, which is illegal, publicly available information is available to everyone. There's a million people trading the stock, right? There's institutional investors, retail investors. There's tons of people who see financial reports, participate in investor conferences. All that information is generated. If that stock price did not incorporate all that information, people would be trading one way or another to get that price back within that ratio, right? Some people would sell it higher, some people would do it lower. It would come back to that center as the efficient market price for that stock. So you might as well throw a and they've had studies where stock pickers, your investment advisors, against just a monkey throwing a dart at a dartboard, right?
Yep.
And it's, as far as I know, it's never been proven that given these assumptions that everyone has available information, that you can outperform just buying
The dartboard.
like an index fund or whatever, right?
Yep.
Yes, just like Vegas, some people are going to win, right? Some people are going to bet and win big. And there's
Hedge
also
fund
going to
guys make a ton
Right.
of money. Of
And
course,
there's
they're
al-
taking money off the top.
and there's
But
also going to be people fund guys or your investor who are going to do worse picking stocks. That's just like Vegas, right? People are going to
Yep.
win at the table, people are going to lose at the table, but it's going to be a wash. Eventually, the house is going to make out with its margin to pay for the casino, right? Based upon the
Yep.
odds. Same thing with the stock market. So that's kind of what I grew up in. So I've always been, I'm not going to be a stock picker. I'm not going to be a day trader. I'm not going to, because the information is available. Now that might be a naive way of thinking of things, especially if you think that there's a lot of corruption within the system and people are gaming the system. And well, you're a sucker if you believe that it's efficient and this is the real price. And then you've got to think about the human psychology of it, that people get caught up in a bull market or a bear market and might oversell a stock, or there might be a rush to the exits, or people might want to ride a wave, which I agree with. There's a whole lot of human psychology and errors in the system. But if you just kind of believe in the money side of it, you think, well, that's the price of the stock. There's a reason why the stock is priced at that today. So
Yeah, I was reading an interesting trading theory today, actually, about an hour before we got on the podcast here, about if you buy the close, sell the open. And so if you look at a stock that's been trying to break resistance for a while and it keeps kind of missing, watch it. If it breaks resistance 15 minutes before close, especially on high volume, you buy it then, because the high volume and the resistance breaking shows that investors are bullish on it. And I didn't do the research. I read the research, but something like doing it that way over time shows like an 1,100% gain over just random guessing. It's not like guaranteed. Sometimes you lose, but that seems to pay off. And I'm going to try to do a little more studying on that to see if it actually holds true, and then I may try to dabble that way a little bit.
Well, there's all these, I guess they call that technical or chart trading, and it's the same thing. There's certain patterns that go on in the market for one reason or another that over time, if you consistently trade in a certain pattern, I mean, that gets into the algorithm trading. But the fact of the matter is everyone knows that trade too, right?
Right.
So
everybody's trying to do it.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's why they have higher PhDs in mathematics to do trading algorithms. So they have proprietary algorithms that, put a bunch of factors in and try to beat the market based upon, okay, I see these patterns for whatever reason, these patterns exist. So if we got X, X, and X, this means we're going to do Y. And some of those work, clearly hedge funds and whatever sometimes make money for whatever reason. I guess you could have a bad algorithm too, which has also happened. So I don't know.
I mean, if you think about circling back around to the GameStop thing, right? The day that went up to $60 or near $60, you knew then, I knew then, this is going to crash back down. It's going to crash down pretty quick. Again, I don't short stocks. I don't like to do it. So I didn't, but I told myself, I was like, you short that stock, you'll make money. You do it, you'll make money like right away, pretty much. And some stuff is obvious. And when you think about stuff like that, I mean, that's kind of why it should be legal, because it just logically, but again, it concerns me that you might be hurting long-term investors.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that kind of obvious stuff, I would say, yes, it's obvious, but do you know the timing of it, right?
Right.
That could have lasted 30, 60, 90 days, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you could short it for 30 days, and then day 29, Roaring Kitty goes back online and says, we're doing it again, or says something kind of,
It's sometimes easy to predict the end result, but the timing is kind of the unknown factor, right?
Yeah. Like gambling, sooner or later, you're going to hit 7
like
on a roulette
right.
table, but it's a matter of, do you have to bet $5 100 times, or do you have to bet $5 one time to hit 7? You don't know.
Yeah. Are you going to sweat it out? Are you going to, and a lot of people don't, and that's, you end up losing. So very interesting discussion, Bob, about the markets. So I used to be a kind of a market purist that it all came out in the end. This meme stock stuff kind of scares me. That this kind of stuff happens. I don't like to see it. I don't think it's good for the market in general. So I don't know what your opinion about that is, but
I like it.
You like it, of course.
I do. I like it because it's kind of free market dynamics, and it forces caution. That's why it forces caution. It's a way to make the short sellers think a little bit about going in too heavy, because the way short selling works now, I mean, they're not just borrowing the stock and selling it. There's different levels of it. There's in many cases more stock being shorted than there's stock available to short. Does that make sense? So that's where it gets dangerous.
Yep. Yeah, there's no rule that says that you can't have an infinite amount of short stock, which then doesn't make sense, right? Because where are you going to get the stock from?
Yeah. So that's why things like this, the meme stocks, it forces these hedge funds to say, wait a minute, maybe we should just rethink this just a little bit. But I also think the right thing to do, and I'm saying it, is more regulation. There should never be more stock shorted than there is stock short, ever.
I don't like the amount of gambling that's allowed in the stock market, I guess.
No, it's not good.
I think it's a good forum of financing companies. I think it's a very good system that we've developed here. But once we make it more of a casino, I think that creates distrust in it, and it's not for what it was originally intended.
And when you allow, on top of it, then the off-market trading through the back channels, it allows some of these hedge funds and some of the people who have lost shorting, for instance, kind of a ticket out. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you agree on more regulation, financial regulation.
Yeah, I think that needs to happen there. I mean, it's just, again, like just looking at fundamentals, to me, logically, it doesn't make sense to do something like that. Allow more stock to be, shorter than it's not right, and it's an easy way to manipulate markets in your favor or kind of stretch things out. Somebody
sort of like betting on the price of oil when you never have to take delivery of the oil, right?
Nope. Yeah, exactly.
It's like that. It's once you get away from the fundamentals and it just becomes people betting on price movements, then you've got a problem.
Yeah. And those with enough money and enough power and enough connections can manipulate all they need to do to make sure they never lose.
Yep. Great. We agree. Well, I guess we'll cover abortion next time.
Can't wait. It sounds like a fun topic.
Jeez. Two guys talking about abortion. What are we thinking? We're looking to be canceled. We need to go viral eventually.
Well, on the bright side, we got a week or two to rethink it.
All right. Yeah, exactly. All right. That's enough for tonight. We'll talk to you soon, Bob. Good night, everyone.
Cheers.
Have a good week.
Good week.
Bye.